Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts project at thunderbolts.info. NASA's IBEX and Voyager 1 missions have shattered all conventional ideas about the heliospheric boundary, the region separating our solar system from interstellar space. In 2009, the IBEX spacecraft created the first all-sky map of the boundary, revealing an astonishing ribbon of energetic neutral atoms. Principal investigator David McComas said at the time that the ribbon is still a big mystery. Our previous ideas about the outer heliosphere are going to have to be revised. Scientists expected that the outer heliosphere would be dominated by the sun and the kinetic actions of solar wind particles colliding with the interstellar medium, creating a shock front. All of the predictions of this model have proved incorrect. One of the great surprises for investigators is that the sun's magnetic field is not deflected as it passes beyond the heliosphere into interstellar space, as the standard model predicted. Study leader Nathan Schwadron says of the IBEX discoveries, "What is really missing here is our understanding of the physics." However, the astonishing discoveries of IBEX and Voyager 1 fulfill the predictions of the electric universe theory that electric currents flow along the arm of the Milky Way, powering the sun. These interstellar currents are inseparable from the so-called open field lines of the sun. Wal Thornhill offers an explanation of the conditions at the heliospheric boundary through an analogous interpretation of planetary nebulae.
It seems odd that planetary nebulae have been observed for decades in fine detail, and yet they are considered to be oddballs, nothing to do with other stars, because they have a beautiful structure. One of the best I can refer to is planetary nebula M2-9, and the picture there shows concentric cylinders formed by an electrical or electromagnetic pinch due to the current which is focused on a star. And if you look at that picture, you can see that these cylindrical sheaths of current close down on the star and come in at the equator. And this is precisely what's happening at the sun. So what we're seeing out there by virtue of the IBEX mission, and now a more recent report which confirms the IBEX results, showing that high-energy cosmic rays also come from that region, is that these electric currents, as they flow in, they come in as filaments in a ring. And where the material from the sun, which flows out in the equatorial plane of the sun and meets those galactic currents, it acts like searchlights punching into a thin cloud. And so what we see are the spots where the searchlights go through the cloud. In this case, the electric currents punch through the sun's plasma sheet, the solar wind, if you like. This also answers the question of why the Voyager spacecraft have not yet detected what was expected, and that is that the magnetic field would wrap around the boundary of the solar influence, and in other words, it would change direction once the Voyager spacecraft left the heliosphere. The very fact that the magnetic field has not changed direction also fits with this model, because the magnetic field traces the direction of the electric current, and here, if you look back at the planetary nebula M2-9, you can see that the current from the star travels outwards a great distance beyond the heliosphere in the same plane as the solar wind. And this is precisely what the Voyager spacecraft have found. The conventional theorists expected that what's called anomalous cosmic rays would be accelerated at the boundary also. But that was not found to be the case. And this was a puzzle too, because it's long been thought that collisions between moving plasmas would be an accelerating mechanism for anomalous cosmic rays. Once again, this shows that what is going on at this boundary is not purely mechanical. It's not a collision, it is an electrical effect.
In 2009, days after the IBEX mission reported the discovery of the mysterious ribbon of energetic neutral atoms, Thornhill published an article in which he outlined the successful predictions of the electric universe model.
NASA's IBEX, that stands for Interstellar Boundary Explorer, spacecraft has made the first all-sky maps of the boundary between the sun's environment, the heliosphere, and interstellar space. The results, reported as a bright, winding ribbon of unknown origin which bisects the maps, have taken researchers by surprise. However, the discovery fits the electrical model of stars perfectly. David McComas of Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas, wrote, "The thing that's really shocking is this ribbon. Charged particles have apparently become bunched along the ribbon near the boundary," says McComas, "but how they got there is still a big mystery. Our previous ideas about the outer heliosphere are going to have to be revised." "I'm blown away completely," says space physicist Neil Murphy of NASA's JPL laboratory in Pasadena. "It's amazing. It's opened up a new kind of astronomy." The expectations of NASA scientists are not being met simply because their shockfront model is incorrect. The boundary that Voyager has reached is more complex and structured than a mechanical impact. Now, I wrote that back in September 2006. IBEX has discovered that the heliosheath is dominated not by the Sun, but by the galaxy's magnetic field. And since the galaxy's magnetic field traces the direction of interstellar electric current flow in space near the Sun, it's a result that conforms to the electric universe model of galaxies and stars. Because the groundwork had already been laid by the electric universe model, I was able to respond to the IBEX discoveries only 5 days later. Now here we are in 2014, and scientists are still scratching their heads about what's going on out there. The answer has been there since the early 2000s, because back in 2006 I also mentioned the fact that what would be discovered out there would not fit with the idea of a star merely ploughing like an inert object, a boat or an aircraft, through a medium. The bow shock and so on would not conform to our expectations, mainly because the effects beyond the star are parts of its electric circuit connecting it to the galaxy, and not just purely a mechanical shock front. Nathan Schwadron finishes the article in space.com by saying, "What is really missing here is our understanding of the physics." He's added also that reconnection between magnetic field lines could be an example of something that changes the conditions of the boundary region. Well, magnetic reconnection is an impossibility. You cannot break and reconnect magnetic field lines. However, you can have electric currents or sudden electric discharges which will change the configuration of the magnetic field almost instantly. What is missing is the understanding that the Sun is an electrically powered object, and that what we're actually delving into out here is electromagnetism, and it's the realm of electrical engineers and plasma physicists, not from standard gravitational theorists.
For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info.